Matsuri is the Japanese word for festival, but the word is actually kind of complicated because it came from the Chinese, but they sort of evolved it to make it Japanese. But it means a lot of things. It could mean Thanksgiving, parade. It could mean reflection. A lot of meaning to it. But it has now come to mean festival as well in Japan. And the biggest festival of all happens. It lasts 2 weeks. The celebration lasts 2 weeks and is comprised of many different events and sub festivals as well. It's called the Giro Matsuri. As I've mentioned, the Giro Matsuri actually happens into the celebration lasts 2 weeks and it's fully supported by the government. And the one interesting observation or one unique thing about it is that number one, there are two huge parades that happen and with gigantic floats during that parade, but they also choose a boy, and that boy is supposed to, because of its purity, because of the boy's purity, then he serves to communicate the wishes, the gratitude, the requests, the apologies of the Japanese to the god. And because at the Giro Matsuri actually started as a as an apology to the gods because of the plague that happened. So it started in 869 AD, and during that time, so as I've said, it started because there was a plague, and so the emperor thought that they needed to apologize to the gods. They've offended the god, and so that's why he started the festival. So then, for us to fully understand and appreciate that, we need to understand part of the history of Japan. Again, this is by no means a comprehensive discussion of the Japanese history, but this is just part, like a huge, not huge, but a small part of their vibrant and long history of the Japanese. Now, in 645 AD, Nakatomi no Kamatari started the era of the Fujiwara clan. And the intention of this clan is to actually detach themselves from the Chinese, because they were highly influenced by the Chinese culture, Chinese politics, and Chinese economy. And so they wanted to sort of redo that part and make it Japanese. So one of the things that they did was to actually try and equalize the equality in outcome. What they did was the government actually bought back the lands from private owners and gave it to the farmers. So their intention is that now that you own your farm, then you don't have to think about mortgage or rent or whatever. You can just till your own land, harvest your own land, and the income would be yours. But there's just a single downfall which affected the entire intention and the entire process of transitioning to a more equal society, and that is taxes. So what they did was actually raise taxes. Now, the farmers didn't have money. They do have a land, they have a property, but they need to pay taxes, and they did not have the money. So the ending, they actually had to sell back the land to private owners. Now, eventually, as private owners started owning all of these lands, they started becoming more powerful than the government. So it sort of created instability. Eventually, the landowners hired samurais to sort of guard their territory and stuff like that. Now, during this economic, social, and political chaos in Japan, a plague happened. And so the emperor thought that maybe the gods are displeased with what we are doing. We're failing big time, and so they needed to apologize to the gods. And so that's where he started dancing, singing, prayers, offerings, and he kept it for as long as needed until the plague started going down. So that's why the celebration is so long, and it has been observed year after year, because the intention is to keep the plague away from the Japanese. All right, so now it is still being observed. It lasts 2 weeks, and it's actually in Kyoto. One of the most interesting things, and the thing that they do, is that they've kept that part of actually getting a boy to become the messenger between the Japanese and the gods, because a boy is supposed to be pure. And so there's like 1 week where the feet of that boy the feet of the boy are not allowed to touch the ground. So because that's when he is super pure, he's communicating with the gods. So he is paraded in a float, a very, very beautiful float. Now that leads us to the next part of the celebration, which is the parade, where that features the floats, the majestic floats that they do. There are two floats, the Yama and the Hoko. So the Hoko is the bigger one, and it's usually 25 meters tall, and it can weigh up to 12 tons. And the wheels of this float is actually so the wheels of this float are actually so big, it is as tall as a human being. And in that float, they actually call it a moving museum, a moving art museum, because a lot of the things that are inside the float, one, there's stuff that you can buy in there, and then the other thing is that there are archaeological findings, there are historical materials in there that you can look at that reflects the history and the evolution of the Japanese. Aside from the actual parade, there's also night parties that happen. There's specifically 3 consecutive nights when the parties actually happen, and separated into 2 weeks. So there are 2 sets, 3 nights of partying. That's July 14, 15, 16. That's the first set. And July 21, 22, and 23. That's the next set of parties. And this is grand. Like, there's a lot of people. You can actually go to the floats, which they park in certain areas, so you can go in there. Tourists can actually go inside the float. They can buy stuff. They can look at things. Now, there are other events that you can actually attend, and one of that is watching the actual construction of the float. They don't use nails, and for a float that big, that functional, to not use nails or screws, that's pretty amazing to me. So you can actually volunteer, I think, as well. So you can watch the construction of the floats, and you can actually volunteer as well. And then there's also a sub-festival that happens, which is the Gion Matsuri. This is the time when locals would actually open their homes to allow other people to see their family heirlooms. They would communicate with people that are visiting their home. So everyone is welcome to visit the locals' home. So that I think, as I've mentioned in the previous video that I have, the beauty of all of this is twofold. One is that it gives the community an opportunity to come together, work towards a common goal, and it strengthens the bond of this unit of society. Everyone is coming together for one goal. And then the other thing is more for you, very reflective, knowing the history of the Gion Matsuri, that it all started because they apologized for their inefficiency, for their shortcomings. They thought they were failing the purpose that was given to them, and so they wanted to do this because they wanted to apologize to their God, to what they believe in. And it should inspire you, especially seeing the grandness of the parade, how they have kept it consistent throughout the years. It should inspire you to also sort of step back and say, and think about your own life, like reflect, what have you done? What have you done? What are the things that you have done? Have you done okay? Think people that you've hurt, opportunities that you've missed, people that you failed, and stuff like that. So I would invite everybody to actually partake in this celebration. I hope you can visit Japan when this happens. There's still some complications when you visit Japan because there's high cases of COVID, I think, and monkeypox, and so they are allowing people to come in Japan, but you can only do like regulated tours. But hopefully by next year everything's more settled and you can visit Japan.